Hello and welcome to Insight Out with Assaad Mohanna. I'm Michael Gaines, and glad you're joining us today as we kick off a rebranded show and a new year of conversations and continue our initiative on bringing insight out and providing you with analysis and perspective on global markets that impact the energy industry around the world. So glad you are joining us, and Happy New Year to you. Hope that you had a great new year. So we are excited to have you on today's show. It is a great opportunity for us to come to you each week and provide some of the same analysis that many of the businesses and leaders within NOV are able to utilize through some of the team here, including Assaad Mohanna here. So we're glad to be able to bring that to you, and we'll look forward to having many guests on throughout this year. So before we bring Assaad in, we're going to go ahead and bring in Shelby Dumaine to talk about how you can be a part of today's show. And I know Shelby will be jumping in and out with some insight from our guests as well throughout the show. So Shelby, good to see you. Happy New Year.
Good to see you too, Michael. Happy New Year. I'm really excited about today's show as well. Our guest today was actually one of our very first guests. So always a pleasure to have him back on the show and hear his insight as well. So I wanted to go over a couple different ways that our audience could get in touch with us at any point throughout the show. If you have a question or a comment for Assaad or our guest, David, who we'll talk about here in a little bit. If you have a question at any point, go ahead and put it in the comments. Of course, we do the Q&A at the end, but like Michael mentioned, if we see a comment pop up that is part of the discussion and relevant to what we're talking about, we're going to feature that on the show as well. So at any point, go ahead and put your questions or your comments there. And if not during the conversation, we'll do them at the end. And if you have any questions for us later on, maybe after the show, if you have a follow-up or maybe an idea for a future episode, there are a couple different ways you can reach out to us. The first is you can email us at socialmedia@nov.com. So that's on the screen now, socialmedia@nov.com. And as always, you can also reach us by phone. So if you'd like to call and leave a voicemail, that number also on screen is country code +1 346 223 4799. And the last thing before I hand it back to Michael, I did want to mention is if you want to watch any past episodes of the show, Inside Out, formerly known as the Ask Assaad Show, if you're seeing it there online, or NOV Live, you can do so at nov.com/live. So we'd love to see you checking out all those old episodes. But for now, glad to have you all here, and I hope to see you in the comments.
All right, great. Thanks, Shelby. And yeah, certainly wouldn't be the Insight Out with Assaad Mohanna if we didn't have a friendly Assaad Mohanna here with us. So want to go ahead and bring in Assaad. Good to see you. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you too, Michael. Great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you look refreshed. I mean, it looks like you had a great break. I know we saw you in you were overseas in Lebanon and were able to spend some time with family. So I know that was a well enjoyed time as well.
And I tell you, it's amazing. It's being overseas and being able to reach our audience and still get on the show. I think that's one of the things that has been a great change in 2020. And there may be not a logical reason why 2021 will be better than 2020, but there's something about that year that's brings a bit optimism and delight. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Well, good. Well, I'm glad to be here on the show, and glad you're here as well. So, of course, we'd be remiss if we weren't able to at least take some time, at least at the top of this show, kind of kicking off the new year by doing a bit of review of 2020 and just kind of taking in stock some of the major maybe banner items that really shaped that year as we start into this new year.
Yeah, Michael, it's no surprise the year was an absolute roller coaster. But I think there were some things that stood out for us. First, early in the year with COVID-19 hitting the global demand and all the lockdown that's happened around the world, reducing all sort of demand for mobility, reduced transportation, any activity. So really that put a freeze on oil demand naturally, which subsequently resulted in oversupply. A war, if we remember, it feels like ages ago, but a war between Russia and Saudi Arabia around the price of oil also started with first initially not extending the cuts, but then quickly resulted in some severe deep cuts. Some of the greatest production cuts we've seen in history. About 10 million barrels is what OPEC Plus came up with. What we saw last year as well, for the first time, WTI reaching close to $40 in the negative, and that was because of that oversupply in the market, and because the storage tanks in Cushing, Oklahoma, where actual delivery of oil happens, could not take any more oil, and the futures for the month of May were really approaching in execution. So people were actually willing to pay money to get rid of those contracts they had on hand. We saw a big market consolidation, big wave of consolidation of the market, lots of bankruptcies, unfortunately, really, really good companies. And we're in fact seeing several of them coming out of bankruptcy in Chapter 11 with a restructured balance sheet and a restructured debt, which honestly was one of the brightest things that happened last year. That restructuring of organizations means a less heavy industry, less debt to service all along. So as these companies resurface, they have more room to operate. And on the consolidation part, we saw some big mergers first, I think, started between Chevron and Noble, and it kind of went on with big names in the E&P world between WPX and Devon, Pioneer and Parsley. We saw ConocoPhillips and Concho. Some big names out there really signaling a perhaps a recovery or a way to recovery for the industry, because it was operated in a particular manner. And the last thing I think that was a big highlight for our industry in particular was the write-downs. We saw about 10% of all equity of those companies that did write-downs in the first 3 quarters. We're still waiting on Q4 results to come out, but in the first 3 quarters of the year, amounting to about $150 billion in write-downs, which is quite significant. So really a lighter industry is what we're coming out with after 2020. Restructured, still uncertainties with the first 2 topics that I mentioned. First, with the price of oil and supply, and whether OPEC Plus will carry on with the production cuts. And second, with COVID-19, whether the vaccine will actually address the demand situation or build enough trust to get people back on the roads and in airplanes, or at the contrary, we'll see more mutations and more scares keeping people at homes.
All right. Yeah, no, that was, and it really was, it was quite a roller coaster of a year. So like you said, I can appreciate the ups and downs of that ride, but I would hope that maybe we have a smoother sailing, so to speak, for this year. Time will tell.
I think so. Yeah, I think we'll see things are heading in the right direction. So expectations are not overly optimistic in terms of going back to a pre-COVID era,
Sure.
But at least I think we're heading in that right direction.
Right. Good. Well, we are going to be taking a direction where we are now moving to introduce our guest today. No stranger to NOV, or if you're anywhere in any kind of social media platform, most likely if you're following anything energy related or oil and gas related, you would have bumped into him. But NOV's Chief Technology Officer and Chief Marketing Officer, because one chief isn't enough, is David Reid here joining us today. So David, thanks for jumping in. And I'm sure after a year of figuring out how to be multiple chiefs, you've got to be exhausted.
Yeah, Yeah, it's been busy.
Yeah, no,
okay. I'm not the only one in this predicament, so that's okay.
Yeah, nope. Well, we appreciate you taking time out. I know you've got a lot on your plate. So Assaad's been pining to get you on the show, and here you are. So I'm gonna get out of the way so he can have first swing at you.
We finally got him, Michael. We finally got David Reid on the show.
I tried to not do it, but here I am.
Yeah,
finally caught me in the hallways.
Literally, yeah. Great to have you, David. I know we said this would be some sort of expectations for 2021, but we're going to try not to make this a Nostradamus type of projections. I know our colleagues and friends at Spears Brothers did a great job at doing some expectations for the year, but really with you, we thought we'd have some conversations on what are some implications of those trends that we mentioned, what happened in 2020, and what do we carry forward into 2021? I'm sure as CTO and CMO of NOV, you get the visibility, you get the peak on what's coming in terms of technology, in terms of trends. So it would be great to have your thoughts on that today.
Okay, well, I mean, there was a lot that didn't happen because we were shrinking in a lot of ways, and so there was opportunistic technology that happened last year, and some of those trends that were you got to see the filtering out of things people were interested in, and really what gets left is the really valuable stuff, is what's here that can make a difference. There's obvious trends of less drilling, less things going on in the production world, things being pushed out, and certain parts that have kept going, but the steady things in the middle, technology-wise, are lots of stuff around data, things that we can be doing, and we play a lot in a lot of different spaces. We already were in a lot of software areas, but we really have moved much stronger this year, and that's based on customer interest in connecting systems. So that's been a big part of last year, and will continue this year, where we're looking at the gathering, collecting, wrangling, and sorting out of data. So we've had shows on that. Before, but I think that's a trend that everyone's involved, but probably something that happened we were not really anticipating was, as everyone's budgets got shrunk to focus, suddenly collaboration comes up to the front. Where before people were trying to grab everything for themselves, they start to realize they can't do everything. There's not the budget for it, and so that's allowed the industry to have to collaborate. So I would say probably at the end of the year, you're starting to see a lot of people talking about playing together more. Those who were already collaborating have good tools. We were doing some work in that space. We'd have multiple years with an operator on staff with us as we developed technology to integrate software. So that was a big win for us. Sometimes these wins are, they're pre-thought. We definitely think about the cycles, and we knew that we were going to eventually face a downturn. For some people who are just 10 years in the industry, they're not used to it. But before that time, we were used to that cycle, and it was natural for all of us to think, what's the next cycle and what can we do about it? And that happened in the data space. There was things we were already doing in the control and automation space. There was things we were doing that really fit perfectly into this market. Just like the remote capabilities with service, where we have the tracker system, tracker headsets that people wear while they're working, but allows us to connect directly. And so that became a big hit in the year because of COVID and lack of travel. And so the ability to get people somewhere without them actually going became really valuable. The ability to get data off of platforms became a big deal. And then the ability to not just rely on cloud systems. That was something you hear a lot of people talk about, the rapid growth of cloud and data on the cloud and how we work on it. But really in our world, we actually needed to be on the edge doing computing where we didn't actually rely fully on the cloud because we're in remote locations. So there was a lot of great work went on in that space. So that's good. We also, our timing on robotics was very good. I mean, we've had pipe handling systems and we've done those for years, but those were always doing the repeated tasks. It wasn't doing everything. So it really wasn't removing people, it was taking people away from dangerous situations. But I think that the trend is we've looked at using industrial robots That's an interesting trend because they're very low cost. You're now looking at someone who makes 7,000 of these arms instead of 10 or 20.
Right.
And when you work out how to program and use those on a drilling rig, there's a huge upside to that. So we've been in that space quietly for a long time, so we were able to air that this year. And so those are great investments that are starting to pay out now. And so there was a lot that we were already doing that was going to hold us through a lot of the downturn. We've had a long downturn, but you really play in the value game. Can you prove the economics? Right. And if you can show economics, things will still thrive. And our best technologies all came in downturns. I mean, the last decade we did a lot of work, but a lot of it was based on downturn learning.
Yeah.
We did integrated systems. Top drives came through a downturn. Roughnecks. All of these things were downturn products where people saw the value. And then when they go to rebuild, this becomes the standard. And of course, it puts you in a great position for the upturn. And so I think that's generally the way it looks. It just got really tight last year. I'm proud of the company that we didn't just pull back all resources from everything, because that's really hard to do when you're in the middle of it, to hold yourself back from getting rid of everything. And we've done a good job of that. So I'm quite happy with that. It was a hard year, but it really gets you fit. It's a requirement that you find ways to be much more economical than you were before. So good technologies, great collaboration, and a lot of the trends that have been talked about are starting to really show value. So that's been good. We'll see more of it. Probably the trend that you'll have seen on some of our channels, we've started to talk about it, has been the move into alternative energy. And we were already there in a lot of spaces. Often we'll have technologies that work in oil and gas that we take into other industries. And then the things inside of our industry already that actually can fit. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of good things we've done in the renewable space, and that's starting to come to the surface. We tend to be more careful about how we talk about it. We don't just say we have an idea and then do a big news splash on that. We tend to go, okay, there's a business idea, let's invest, let's develop, let's prove it out, let's win some business, then let's talk. And so we're quite proud to see that we're starting to talk, because we're starting to get business off of that investment.
And David, you're way ahead of me here. You're covering some things that Michael and I had planned on asking, but this is all fair game. This is good. I want to kind of circle on. I do appreciate your technical acumen, but I also know you're a business person too, and you keep a pulse on how things are going. We talked a little bit about the market consolidation, where that's heading, and how that's potentially a way to recovery. How do you think that ends us up? What do we inherit in 2021 with those new market dynamics?
Well, change happens, and change actually works in our favor. When people consolidate, it's quite a turmoil to go through. But I mean, we do it as a habit. I mean, we acquire companies, and we live in that normal feeling of things consolidating and thinking about how to run things together. But opportunity always comes out of that. Some of it, there's just a struggle to get capital, and that's tough on everybody. But I think we seem to be having some mild signs of improvement. But what happens in the process is that same downturn thinking is in our customers and in the service companies. And so as they consolidate, best practices come out. And that can actually be good for the industry, where when you see a company, I was in a meeting on Monday where two companies had come together last year, and they realized there was a best practice at one that really would work in our favor. And they were starting to say, okay, this is the better way to go. And so that's good to see, because there are things that start to happen when people consolidate, or when they get really focused on the core. For us as a manufacturer, we suffer all the time from companies who manufacturing or servicing equipment isn't their core. But when times are good, though, oh yeah, we can do that and we can do this, and they hire different people with different experiences, and they build all this capability. Well, that all kind of melts off in a downturn. They start to realize we can't afford to do this. And for us, that opens up doors to be a lot more collaborative. and to help our customers, and work closer with them. So I think that's good. I think really hard questions of the norms, that really opens up doors where people start to go, well, we've been doing it this way. Could we do it different? Particularly when someone's being good. You look at U.S. shales, so much cost was just taken out by the practice and the experience of shales and what it was naturally. All these efficiencies. So where does that take us now? But there's still more. There's still more inside of shales, and there's still more in every operation. And 10 years of good times always has a level of waste. And so it's a time to really focus and to do what you're best at. And if those who get that and focus on their best work really will do okay.
So maybe, David, I wanted to follow up with you. So kind of to some of the points you made earlier, we're talking about some of the recent impacts from an operational standpoint. And of course, when you look at rig count, that's dropped globally, production drops, wells shut in, especially when you're looking at the impact on the drilling side of things, which I know you have some deep background and expertise in. How do you see drilling activity responding, now kind of coming back into 2021? Is that something that you think it's more the same, or are we looking at something a little different, kind of alluding to some of Assaad's comments earlier?
I think the right way to think about things isn't to try and hope yourself forward. So we don't really know. I was on a call with the team this morning and just kind of said, listen, we don't know what the market's going to bring at us. We just don't. And people will tell you they do. And inevitably, everyone is either off or wrong. And some may be right and they'll claim some superior wisdom. But ultimately, it's a commodity that swings on world politics and all sorts of other decisions that are out of our control. So the best thing to do is to execute and plan for the worst. And I think that mentality really helps. But to also not lose vision, you've got to have a vision of where you're going. Because if you don't, you go back to your old ways. And that's a really important part of having a different vision and saying, okay, let's choose this and go after this. And I think that's really important in these markets. So it's not all doom and gloom. It's just very practical. How can we survive, and where could we get business? And how does that align with who we are? So looking at what you're strong at and growing into it, and assuming the worst is generally what we do, and then being ready for if it changes, because we can grow something quite easily. But watching that and being on top of that, not just year over year planning, but starting to get much closer to when should we move and where should we move. And I think that's really the game for everyone. I think the guessing of the market, I've been around it enough after 30 years that it's not so important to focus on that. If you spend your time focused on that, you will either get depressed or be elated. But either way, your response isn't good. You need to kind of say, here's our core, there's our base, here's how we'll grow, here's the markets to be. And I think that's the best way to think. You got Spears and others all giving us good information. But ultimately, you set yourself for success and survival first, but also not at the cost of your future.
Yeah, and I know, David, you've mentioned in the past some examples of those investments that we've made, or tools and developments that we've invested in, perhaps in markets that weren't the end goal, but really designing something from the ground up. Preparing it for bigger markets like offshore or Norway.
Yeah, I think there's things we know we have. For example, you'd look at offshore rigs, not a lot of those going to be built for a while. There was an overbuild, and we saw that in land before. And we know what that feels like. We know what that will be like, and so you're left with, okay, what else? What else can we do in that space? Yeah. If there's something to build, of course, we'll be all over it. But then can you bring something disruptive? That's what made our businesses survive through past downturns, was really surprising innovation. And that's why I'm glad we're still investing. I think a lot of people go into that survival hunker down mode, and then it's too late, and they feel cheated when the market comes back. Why wasn't I able to get this? It's really about investment now and protecting investment, but looking at markets that, some will come back, they'll come back steady, but how can we help our customers continue going in the lower cost barrel Because really that's the bottom line for all of us is can we help deliver something better? And that hasn't changed through all of this. And so you're constantly thinking about how can we change that. At the same time, what's driving lower cost barrel is the swing internationally into the renewable space where our typical logic is lost. I mean, we kind of spend a lot of time looking at it and trying to understand it, but it's not the same business model or business thinking that we've been used to. So that's been fun actually and interesting and confusing. But it's something it's over 7 years now that we've been modeling and playing around with what we can do with that. And so it's nice to have had a strategy and a plan and to watch that start to play. I mean, our obvious stuff, I mean, the biggest part of that business for us is the installation of the wind towers. And that's been a good business to have, and it's jackups. It's not something foreign to us. It's lifting systems. And so we've been able to get, we got the first Jones Act vessel, which is great news. We got the biggest installation vessel in the world for a Japanese contract. So we have those coming, which are just good signs that we're doing the right things. We're solving problems. And I think when you start to look at the problems over in the energy alternatives, it gets to be fun. There's really problems in that space of being driven solely by governmental planning. And so it's not that that's a bad thing. It's a good thing. I mean, we wouldn't be where we are, but there's lots and lots of opportunities to improve in that space. And so I really like that. I really like the various forms and what we could do there. I mean, everyone in oil and gas is talking geothermal. Some saying it's just there's no money in geothermal, why do it? Or there's no volume. And then there's another side of the house that's saying maybe we should invent something different. Maybe there is volume if we make volume and plan on it. So there's two camps, and they seem to be quite separate from each other. But there's lots of cash in that space. I mean, there is money for any kind of alternative energy plan. And so some will be foolish money and some will be smart money where there really is something here. So I think that's going to be fun to see. And you can get grumpy about one or the other. It's actually smart to just think we've always been energy. We've always been solving world problems. And we've been improving the conditions of the world. And this is the next step. It's just a logical thing for us to look at. If you're going to scale that and you're going to use business to grow it, that's a perfect fit for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know. And it looks like there have been some good comments in the chat here. I know Shelby's been keeping an eye on the comments more than I have. I've been kind of glancing, but you've definitely been in there. How's it been? What's some of the feedback, Shelby?
Yeah, so there's actually been a pretty interesting conversation that kind of has spurred in the comments, and I'll summarize it quick for y'all, and I'd like to get your reactions a little bit or your input on it. So Susan on LinkedIn kind of chimed in that another category, like you were talking about, Assaad, another category that might or will affect oil and gas is kind of the push or pivot by some states, some manufacturers to electric vehicles and how that will affect the oil and gas market. And then we saw Abhishek and a few others were chiming in that, and it might load some power plants, but until solar is figured out, again, that conversation has kind of shifted to solar energy, and maybe we'll see more of that in 2021, or kind of the direction that that's taking. So I just wanted to see if y'all had any input or wanted to chime in on this conversation too about whether it's that effect of electric vehicles on oil and gas, or maybe kind of the trend for solar energy.
I don't know if I would call it just electric vehicles. The use of electricity, although it still depends where that's being sourced. It doesn't necessarily imply renewables, but certainly the electrification has a level of efficiency that's really interesting. There's a level of control that's interesting, but ultimately the real swing is moving to alternatives to supply that electricity, and that does get interesting. And there's lots of issues still to be sorted out on storage and on how we do that. If you look at what California has gone through, there's been just a rapid, transition where they said, okay, we're gonna turn off one of our nuclear power plants and we're gonna supply that with solar and wind, missing one of the really important factors, which is that nuclear plants constantly deliver. And so they're now dealing with that variability of solar and wind. that's a challenge, and there's still things to be sorted out. So those kind of rapid things are going to leave a bad taste in the consumer's mouth. But I do think there's a move. I mean, that's why I'm a big fan of geothermal for that reason, because it's a constant deliverer, much like nuclear is. And there's a lot of fear over nuclear. Is a whole nother conversation as to how that's developed and whether there should be the same fears. But certainly in earthquake zones, I can understand being more concerned. But I do think that's a good starting lesson for us. Is I just love that the challenge in energy hasn't quite been solved, and I think we can solve it. I think hydrogen is fascinating, but just like when we look at the floating offshore wind market, you scratch your head quite a bit on the economics. But at the end of the day, these are infrastructure choices. I think people get lost in the economic question. When you're talking about country and infrastructure with power, we're so used to thinking, well, we have low cost, easy to transport energy in hydrocarbons. But the truth is, we have roads. Those are subsidized. I mean, there are things that are subsidized that help the fuel work. Yeah. Even oil and gas has been given tax breaks. So there are things there we forget that we think it's all business, but sometimes it's infrastructure and countries and energy independence, and people worry about that. Countries worry about it. There is the impact of oil and gas that I think we'll fix a lot of that. I think we'll see less impact on the environment through oil and gas and hydrocarbon products, and we have various products working in that space to improve the carbon footprint. So that'll stay, will improve. But then, I think there's a need for other things to be in the mix. And people get very emotional about it because these are our jobs, and people, or it's your politics that fit into it. And you need to kind of throw that aside and understand that these things are they're important. I think everyone forgets that we didn't really leave the Stone Age because we ran out of stones. It's not that we're waiting to run out of oil, which some people, when I talk to people not in the space, they're all like, how do you feel it's almost over? And that's been going on since the 70s. It's more that we could do some better energy solutions, and we should be looking at them. And so I think it's exciting, honestly. I think human beings have had an incredible time because of what we've done in energy, and we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep improving the quality of life for people all over the world. And so it'll be interesting. The impact of high cost electric is going to be interesting politically over time. Whether we see other countries moving more to hydrocarbons and still developing or not, I just think it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I may have a few things to say about it.
No, and I share your excitement on that, David. And I'll echo the fact that honestly, there's no shortage of challenges in energy as a whole. I think what 2020 showed is that there's challenges in oil and gas still. And what we're also seeing in renewables or the energy transition, that too has plenty of challenges. And what's true is, I think the skill sets that we've built in oil and gas are transferable. Yeah. And that heavy machinery, high technology, high precision, and longevity of that machinery to live for 20, 30, 40 years in harsh environment is the same in either worlds. And so that's
and offshore is perfect. When you start looking at floating wind, I mean, it's right up our street. And
yeah.
Even what we're doing on data systems, what we're doing on uptime, I mean, all of that is transferable. Yeah. And I've always heard that we consider ourselves to be behind. But as we've learned as we go into other industry, particularly on the data side, that we're actually quite advanced because of the harsh environment experience that we have. So that's been interesting to learn, is dealing with what we call the dirty environment to get clean data. It's a big opportunity for us, not just in oil and gas, but it's taught us a lot. It's taught us how to be international. I mean, when you look at the geothermal world, they're pocketed based on regions. They don't really, there's some connection, but the companies generally grow in their region. And so that international capability is really could be very interesting. Scalable could be interesting. Yeah. There's some technologies I'm really keen to watch ourselves down the next 2-3 years on what we can do in that space to generate, electricity out of the earth. And that's just going to be interesting. I think that all the geologists love that idea because it's still in their still in their expertise,
Yeah. I'm looking at the comments line, and I know Shelby's eager to ask you a couple more questions, David. But before that, I'll squeeze one in. You're clearly 2020 has been detrimental, not just on our industry, but at the people level. Yeah. We're changing behavior. We're working from home to a point where, going back to what we used to be the normal would not feel normal. Yeah. What are we taking with us into the new year?
I think it's all new ground. I think everyone's had new experiences. There's a ton of learning going on. We've all gone through that. We're in an office here that mostly empty. Most people working from home, and people have learned how to do it. So I don't think it's particularly optimal to be on screen with people all the time, but it's economical.
Yeah.
It's practical for lifestyle. Right. And so there just seems to be kind of two camps. One, I can't wait till everyone's back, and it depends on your personality type. People, if you're in a low trust environment and you're a boss, you really can't wait to get everyone back because you need to see them and you're not sure they're doing the right thing. But if you're in a more trust environment, I think it's got more opportunities for people to work from home if they can. I mean, we've had plants that never stopped all the way through this. We just were very, very safe and monitored everything. Yeah. And I'm very proud of the work we've done to keep people safe. And we check internally on how people feel. And we got good feedback from the employees on how they felt we've communicated and gone through some of these hard times. I think it will change everything. I think it pushed technology when we would have never guessed it. People had to learn technology. It's kind of like the iPhone did to a lot of people, where AI and automation and integration of software in your life, those were all things that if you try to describe it, people say, no, I don't want it. But when you got the utility without describing what it was, it happened. Yeah. And everyone's just comfortable with it. And that's happened here. There's people are learning how to use technology to improve their lifestyle and to make it work. And so people have, I think anyone who was stuck at home with a spouse got 10 years of marriage in 1 year. I've been married 33 years. I mean, I can tell you, I'm watching people go through things. I'm like, that usually comes up at a 10-year period, but you're also going to work and not being around each other. And so I think that's advancing people and what they care for and value, and also knowing your own flaws. I think that all of that stuff's coming up. And there's certain level of risk with people being isolated as well. So there's all sorts of new things that we're going to deal with through all of this. But I'm always looking optimistically at things and saying, okay, what does this mean? Yeah. And for me, there's a lot of good things came out of this, a lot of frustrating things, but at the same time, being able to connect better with people. I think, I miss people. I miss being together with people. Everyone does. So it's not optimal, but it is teaching us. It's changing everything, I think.
It's great.
Absolutely.
And it's teaching us.
So like Assaad mentioned.
I was just going to say, it's teaching us about ourselves too. Just I used to consider myself somewhat of an introvert, but 5 days after the lockdown, I'm like, that's enough. I've had my alone time now. Where are you?
Misdiagnosis there, I think, right?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people find that out, and introverts find out they had other issues. Some people who were introverted were struggling with depression they didn't know about, and so a lot of things happen for people that they had to kind of work through and work out how can I be healthy. Yeah. And I think people connected to their families more than they ever have, and the ones you can't see, you feel more compelled to talk to and connect with. So I think all of those things are good lessons for us.
Yeah. Sorry, Shelby, you had something to say.
It's all right. No problem. I was going to say, I'd be the first to say, in the past, I might have said, oh, yeah, I'm close with my mom. After this year, I'm like, she's my best friend. So definitely relate to getting closer to family. So I did have some questions from the audience. So this first one, Roxanne on LinkedIn was wondering if y'all could comment on additive manufacturing's value prop for NOV, maybe integration of that, And just for viewers, if you're not familiar with the term additive manufacturing, that's kind of the industry standard term for 3D printing or tools that can do 3D printing. So could you comment on maybe how that might play in with NOV?
Well, we have a group that works on it across the different manufacturing fronts, and some usually when there's a few applications where it's really like it's a no-brainer now, things you can't manufacture easily. So in our mixing business, which we obviously mix stuff in oil and gas, but we mix all sorts of things in the industrial space, and custom mixers that can really produce better results are better 3D printed. And so we've kind of moved into that space. We've looked at a lot of applications, some large. We're looking at a hook, for example, for traveling equipment that you could. It's actually for a crane in the application, but you can print it in Singapore from designing it here, and that compared to shipping it starts to add up. So there's various places that we look at it. We're constantly trying to pick at it. Every engineer wants it, mostly because of the fun that we have when in our R&D world, we have a ton of 3D printers. Not that I've weighed them, but there's a lot of them. But the guys like to go try things. I'll often be out in the test rig and there'll be something plastic there. You're like, well, what is that? Well, we're just fit testing this to see what it would look like. And that's kind of cool. You have that ability. I think when I go into the R&D space, people will have scale models more. They'll have tried things. They can show you exactly what they're thinking. I had someone, was trying to convince me about something and showed me the actual mechanism working. I went, oh, okay, now I see it. So yeah, it's really good in that space. I think it'll keep growing. Costs will get under control, but we're also probably one of the largest ever, in the world of fiberglass and composites. And so it's a nice fit in there as we do big additive manufacturing has its potential for us, because we certainly do that in the composite world, very large structures, and that's kind of a good fit for us. So I think there'll be more. And more, particularly when it solves a problem. I think that's where sometimes things can be expensive until you can find a way to either get the cost out or deliver some value you couldn't get otherwise.
Yeah, I would add to that, maybe to your point, David, that what's happened last year is increased resourcefulness of people in general. So things like that, even the fiberglass idea of replacing steel with composite pipe to reduce a platform's weight, that's saving energy. So there's plenty of good ideas like that.
I got asked that question earlier this week by someone looking at the Gulf of Mexico. They wanted to put more stuff on their platform and had no load capacity to do it. And of course, the answer is take your rotten steel and replace it with some long-term composite materials, and they were immediately, saves money, saves having to build another structure, saves all these other things.
Diesel.
And, so it's something people don't think about. There's a long way to go in alternative materials.
Yeah,
there are some limitations, but generally it can replace a lot of different things. And I think 3D printing fits in the same kind of world.
Yeah, that was a good question from Shelby. I think she has one more, and then we'll let her go. I know she's like, don't forget about me. We haven't forgotten about you.
I know. Well, I saved maybe I won't say it's the best question. I'll say maybe I'm a little partial to this question. It's one we actually got on another social post, and when I saw it, I said, "Oh, I'm saving that for when David comes on the show." And so I wanted to actually ask. I'll back up. We did a post about the change from National OL Farco to NOV, and we actually got a comment that said, "Wait, I've always been calling it NOV. What does this mean? Why? What's different? What is this different?" So I kind of wanted to pose that question to you. Is for those who saw that post talking about the change, what does that mean to you or to NOV?
Well, we had an employee post an old video, which was quite funny. NOV State of Mind, which is. It's funny because we were calling it NOV, and that was before the first change, which was probably about 6 years ago, where we started to realize that. And at that time, we were looking at lots of industrial markets where we have products in oil and gas, but they also work in industrial. And the potential confusion of having a brand name called Oil Well in your name means that you can be at a wind exhibition, and if it says National Oil Well Farco, they're just like, are you lost, little boy? Are you supposed to be here? This is an alternative energy business. But yeah, so why people are so used to it is we really transitioned, and this is true of brands, that we can make a transition, but our internal language probably takes longer to change. And so we, because of the downturn, didn't pull down a lot of signs. We just left them up. But really, our name has changed and has been changed for a while, but our legal name wasn't. And so that was kind of the last step. And that was really a conversation with us and the board, and kind of saying, when are we legitimately saying we're not just an oil and gas company, which we always have been, not just an oil and gas company. There's lots of things you can see on the shows that you guys do that we do that are not oil and gas. But our core was oil and gas. And so I think changing it, even though it's a great brand name, National Oil Well and Barco, was just huge names. When we bought all these companies, they stayed, so they were strong. But really changing it happened 6 years ago. So the person writing the comment is right. All our logos, all our digital, everything went to NOV, and you don't really see the written out name, but you still can see it around town in Houston, and you can see it on buildings, and you could see it when you went to what our legal name was. And so it was finally time to say, no, it's the right time. We've got enough critical mass in other areas that we need to go to NOV. And there's a nice side story. Someone wrote to me and said, wow, you're using the root Latin of new, because that's what NOV is the word new in Latin. And so they were like, what a clever move. And I was like, yes, it is. It just so happened to be the brand initials, but it is. I like that. I like that idea of constantly, looking for the new, constantly leading towards the new way. And I think if you look at all of our brands and our history, that's what we've done, is we've always had this kind of new edge. What else could we do? So I love that about our company, and it's a fitting name.
Well, that's I think it's a fitting name, and certainly maybe a fitting way to cap off our first episode here this year on the new Inside Out with Assaad Mohanna, and certainly no better way to start than with a special guest of your caliber, David. So appreciate you joining us. We've had David Reid, NOV's Chief Technology Officer and Chief Marketing Officer, joining us here for our first episode of Inside Out. So Assaad, know you're excited for today's conversation, and certainly many more to come down the line.
Absolutely, we got a long lineup for this year's shows. Inside Out is the new name, and the reason why we changed that name is to kind of get more identity, get a more color to the show, more very special guests like today, more industry experts, and outlook about the industry. So I look forward to that. We'll keep a pulse on market trends and activity, and we'll keep our audience up to date with what's happening in our industry and in energy in general.
All right. Well, thanks, Assaad. And as always, a special thanks to all of our viewers for joining us today. And we look forward to joining you in the next episode. Feel free to stick around after today's show as we kick off a new segment, which is really the Inside Out after show. So from all of us here at NOV, thanks for watching and for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time. All right, great show, everybody.
Good show.
Let me just start.
You're waiting for it
by the truth.
Yeah. Well, hey,
Inside Out.
So those that are online, worry not. We know we're still live. So this is a new part of our show, after show, and so we're all just here after our main conversation. So feel free to join us. David, I know that normally you are just traveling everywhere. Do you miss the track? Because you're like all over. Like, I don't know how many diamonds you have.
25 years, I think. There wasn't a month I didn't cross a continent. So yeah, wow. It looked great and was not great.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Some of my peers are saying, "Oh, don't you really miss it?"
Yeah.
No, I don't really miss it. It is. I mean, you don't when you're in it, when you're in a groove of travel, you don't think much about it. It's your job. You got to keep going. But when you stop, then you don't want to go back.
Yeah.
And when you're in it, you don't want to stop. So it's an interesting, just a lifestyle thing. But
It's a lifestyle. It's a habit that you build up.
I miss traveling a little. I haven't traveled at all, so
but 25 years, you don't have a lot of. I wish I could go. You know, I look. What's happening to me is, of course, social media is feeding back my images all the time of what I did all these years, and I made it look great on social media. It was a lot harder than that, but I look at it and I feel the exhaustion more than I feel the, wow, look at that, I was there. I mean, I really did love the international friends and connections.
Yeah.
And loved all of that. Loved seeing my family regularly. I mean, that was, I think when I first moved to the States, I was just in architecture in LA, and it made me miserable because I just missed home.
Yeah.
So I've always had that, like, you don't miss home.
And you always get a chance to make a stop somewhere and see somebody you haven't seen in a long time.
Well, and I actually built that into my structure. I would, because I didn't want to live in hotels all the time. I wanted to make sure I was having a normal life, because someone, cleaning your bed and giving you food all the time, it's really bad for human beings.
Yeah.
So I tried to be around people's kids, tried to be in normal life environments. I found churches wherever I went around the world. I'm like, I just tried to be as normal as you can, because it's very, very unhealthy.
I know people are wondering why are there so many people on the screen. I want to give a shout out to Paul and Kamal and Wayhan, who are the stars behind the screen there, helping us out.
Every week we're helping you guys.
That's how it works.
Magic happen.
David, David, we didn't get a chance to talk about your Red M Foundation. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, I have a plug. We have a executive kind of golf for good, it's called, thing coming up. And what it is we Red M is something I started about 3 years ago, where people give their talents in a kind of pro bono crowdsourcing way in their spare time towards helping organizations that help women and boys and men and girls that all get out of sex trafficking. And so it's something that, as I got closer to it, my wife worked in that space, I started to realize how much money they need. It's like someone's been in a cult and also been through some of the worst abuse in their life, and the repair work on the human being is extremely expensive. And most people in the space of trafficking want to join groups that can talk about it or make people aware, or and so the real pain is in this recovery side. So we started offering that. It originally I was on the board of an organization called Redeemed, and we just were helping them, and it just keeps growing and keeps growing. And we serve a lot of different groups, and we have a lot of people, but we kind of plug them in and make sure we worry about the health of people. So when people do charitable work, they tend to get caught on a path, and they can't. That's not our website up there. Red M.
The wrong one.
Joinredm.com.
Oh, sorry. I'm glad.
Red M. I'm sure they're great.
I'm sure they're great. Yeah, in case you wanted to know, I'm sure they're great.
But we spend time making sure people don't overcommit and burn out. So that's really been our game. And you're separating people from the organizations, which they will hold on to you for life. And then 6 years down the road, you're thinking, why am I even doing this? It's killing me. So it's been fun. We did a big actual event where people came and spoke and people watched, and there you go. There's the right place to go. But we're on YouTube as well, and you can see our different speakers on the subject of human trafficking. But that was fun. I mean, we in a 2-month period, we built a whole TED type conference. It was pretty cool. Yeah. And that's just a bunch of people piling in. So
Definitely.
If you ever see any social media stuff from Red M, that's Kamal.
Hi.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got involved with Red M when I was in college, and I figured about it just kind of came to me on LinkedIn about this organization that is having a lot of professionals come together for a purpose, and which was to go ahead and spread awareness for just sex trafficking. So it was very interesting, and then something that I think everybody should at one point in their life get involved with, something like this. It really helps to open your eyes on what is out there.
Well,
Absolutely. I've seen them
it's
talk
amazing.
at different events, and it's incredibly impactful to hear it.
Yeah.
For sure.
And it's amazing. I mean, seeing you guys give time to this honorable cause and putting your efforts on top of what you do on a daily basis. David, you've led this, and you can't hide it from my LinkedIn feed. But I always keep an eye. And you said you have an event coming up with golf.
Yeah, February 22nd. Let me see if I can remember their website. If you go to redeemed-golf.com, it's at Royal Oaks Country Club. So we're doing an event. If you want to just serve, let us know. You can go and serve. Or if you want to play or sponsor, we get some really good corporations involved, and this will be high-end executives playing golf. And so it's a good networking experience for kind of senior executives. So it's the first time we've tried this, the kind of country club world. Not my world, but I'm happy to make it happen. And the beauty of these things is it looks like I do a lot, but really I do a little. I do the things I can do. I speak because I'm used to it, and I post because it's easy because I have 2 kids in social media all the time, and so it's, for my age, I'm probably more of a social media user than anyone, and I get bored easily. So all my spare times, I'm just pushing things onto social. So I'm kind of weird that way. But so it's all not as everyone's like, I can't believe you do all the things you do. I do all the things I do. I don't I get my job done, and then I there's in the evenings I can find space to do other things. So it works out.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Cool. All right.
I want to do one thing. Are we about to wrap up?
Yeah.
Okay, so Ask Assaad. The real story of why Inside Out is because Assaad didn't choose Ask Assaad, and it just felt awkward because it's like, yeah, ask me. It's my show.
It's my show.
So we had to change the name because it was we put it on him. Poor Assaad. He's like, I told him people will be watching, going, "Who does he think he is?" Ask Assaad. He didn't come up with it.
Ask Assaad.
I've been looking for an opportunity to tell that story for the last 40 shows.
I know it's a burden on you because you did not choose it.
Well, it started as an inside joke, internal, inside the company, and then when we said we'll bring the show external, we never really.
That's right. Too late.
Changed it.
Too late.
Look at that ego.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wow, that's a relief.
There you go. Well, we're better than the after show. All right. Well, cool. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks, David. This was really great.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. We'll see you guys later.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Later.
Bye.